أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون. إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم. إنه كان من المفسدين. ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين. ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين. ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
All praises for Allah, the Almighty, who holds the control of entire universe. All the blessings of Allah for those this universe has been created. People ought to be followed who were guiding and leading others to follow the given path of Allah Almighty. May Allah bless and empower us to adopt the way shown by our Creator, Allah the Almighty. And those who live for others, they live for others as well as for themselves. Quds, the first Qibla of the Islamic world, is the homeland of thousands of displaced displaced Palestinians who have been under colonization by the occupier since 1948, backed by the arrogant nations. After the victory of the glorious Islamic Revolution, Imam Khomeini has made the issue of liberating Palestine its top priority and has turned Quds Day, the last Friday of the Ramadan, for the oppressed people of Palestine. Today is the Al-Quds Day. If you truly care human rights, you will stand against the occupation of Palestine. Today is the world's largest Quds Day protest. Our first honorable guest is not only a religious scholar, but also a keen observer of geopolitical situation. He is from Iran, His Excellency Hujjatul Islam, Dr. Hamid Shahriari. Dr. Hamid Shahriari.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين ومن اهتدى بهداه إلى يوم الدين. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. 43 years ago, Imam Khomeini Rahmatullah alayh called Al-Quds Day to be on the last Friday of the blessed month of Ramadan, and asked the Islamic people and free people in the world to come together on this day to support the Palestinian ideals and the Palestinian people, and to confirm that this issue is alive in the soul or a priority for the Islamic world, and it will remain so until the occupied land is liberated and purified from the Zionist impurity. Today, peoples of about 80 countries around the world are fulfilling their duty toward this holy day, and they are proving that the caring for this day is the greatest opportunity to unite Islamic Ummah toward a great goal and a faithful ideal. These years have also proven more and more that global arrogance has implanted this Zionist cancer gland in the heart of the Islamic world, with the aim of killing the spirit of resistance in the heart of the Islamic world to gain their utilitarian goals to achieve the resources of Islamic world. On the other hand, however, it has been proven that the Ummah of Muhammad is alive. The spirit of resistance is constantly rising in it, and the will to achieve the goal of liberation and restore pride and dignity, and to record victories after victories over the Zionist enemy, and after that the front of the arrogant is increasing in it. It shows that the arrogant world has a double standard in the face of war and justice. It is better to say that arrogant world is pursuing its own interests and therefore contradictory behaviors in common cases. We say if killing is bad, it is bad everywhere. If homelessness is bad, it is bad everywhere. But the Western world, led by the United States and NATO, is behaving in a double manner in the face of common problems in the world, as we can see in Ukraine and Palestine nowadays. And this shows their cruel and arrogant spirit. Violation of the fundamental rights of human beings is what we see today in Holy Quds and occupied Palestine and the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. First, occupying Palestinian inhabitants in the occupied territories. Second, settling racist settlement. Third, settling fanatics in the occupied territories, more than about 5,400 Jews housing units in the year 2019. Fourth, ordering the beating of Palestinians by fanatical Jews, which has happened more than 500 in 2019. Five, destroying farms and Palestinian trees by settlers. Destruction of more than 11,000 trees and more than 14 million square meters of soil leveling. Six, blocking access to holy places for worship, which has happened more than 240 cases in 2019. 7. Extensive walling between areas to restrict access. 8. Creating new roads for the benefit of the settlers and without considering the interest of Muslim citizens. 9. Creation of new and numerous checkpoints and buildings in the occupied territories. 10. Imposing economic, social, and psychological pressure on them and the desecration of holy places. These are among the atrocities that this usurping regime is carrying out, and it is against the rights of the citizens. However, we find with great regret and sorrow those who are defeated in the facing psychological and political pressure and are rushing toward normalization with a murderous racist enemy who violates all sanctities. This group, which is considered a stigma on the body of the Ummah, is moving toward humiliation and notoriety in the Islamic world with these actions. And they are selling their real materials for a small, immediate, and fake interest. Actually, they forget themselves, and after they forget Allah, where He says, وَلَا تَرْكَنُوا إِلَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا فَتَمَسَّكُمُ النَّارُ وَمَا لَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ مِنْ أَوْلِيَاءَ ثُمَّ لَا تُنصَرُونَ. It means, and do not incline to those who are unjust, lest the fire touch you and you have no guardians besides Allah. Then you shall not be helped. And I hope that the warnings of the people on the International Day of Quds will awaken them and return them to the arms of the Ummah. On International Quds Day, Muslim peoples and free, peace-loving people declared their condemnation of every action resulting from retreat and defeat, and their support for the resistance approach that defends the dignity and honor of Ummah, and it declares its will to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood, steadfastness, patience, and continuation, investing in the blessing of the blessed month of Ramadan, and recalling the call of Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh, the man who was righteous in the way of God, and God glorified his victory, and this integrity expanded to include the whole Ummah, inshallah. The World Forum for the Proximity of Islamic School of Thought considers this day of Quds as a day of cooperation and augmentation among the members of the United Islamic Ummah, and wishes that all plans and conspiracies of the enemies of Islam be suppressed. Plans such as burning the Holy Quran and insulting the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his progeny, and preventing worship in Quds and forbidding the hijab in oppressive countries are all condemned. We are a united Ummah. While maintaining unity, we avoid religious, ethnic, and racial conflicts. We condemn terror in the world and takfir within the Islamic Ummah. Terror and takfir are the conspiracies of the enemy to hold back the Islamic countries. We joined hands to witness to fruition of a new Islamic civilization, once again with the establishment of a united Islamic Ummah and the union of Islamic countries. We also announced today that we are launching a platform to raise funds for the Palestinian oppressed people, and that we will soon announce ways for the Muslim Ummah to help them. This project is currently being designed, and we hope that in the short term, this platform will make it possible for Palestinians to receive donations from all over the world to relieve part of their suffering. فَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَنْصُرُهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. And surely Allah will help him who helps his cause. Most surely Allah is strong, mighty. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
After the victory of the revolution, Imam Khomeini set a day at the earliest opportunity to show global sensitivity to the faith of Quds and save it from the clutches of the criminal Zionists as Quds Day, and issued a message on this occasion. In a message issued on August 4, 1999, the holy month of Ramadan, Imam said to the Muslims of the world, I have warned Muslims of the dangers of usurper Israel for many years. And now, these days, he has intensified his brutal attacks on his Palestinian brothers and sisters. And I invite all Muslims around the world to choose the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, which can determine the faith of the Palestinian people as Quds Day, and during a ceremony to support the international solidarity of Palestinians, declare the legal rights of the people of Palestine. I ask God Almighty for the victory of the Muslims over the people of disbelief. Now I would like to request His Excellency Dr. Murtaza Daman Pak Jami to throw light on Al-Quds. He is the Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Iran, our regular political analyst. Keep an eye on geopolitical situation of the region. He will throw light on Al-Quds. Dr. Murtaza Daman Pak Jami.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me first thank the Ahlul-Bayt Association in Portugal for its initiative to organize this webinar on Al-Quds Day. This year, in the official calendar of the Islamic Republic of Iran and in the program of many Muslims and freedom-loving communities of the world, April 29th, coinciding with the 27th day of the holy month of Ramadan, is known as the International Day of Quds. As we know, Al-Quds Day is a memorial to Imam Khomeini, the late founder of the Islamic Republic. In a message in support of the Palestinian nation issued on August 7, 1979, which was the 13th day of the Ramazan at that time, he declared the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan each year as Al-Quds Day. Well, it is true that Quds Day is specifically dedicated to Palestine and the complete freedom of the first Qibla of Muslims, but in fact this day is an occasion to raise awareness among the world Muslims on the important issues of the Islamic world and strengthen the solidarities and unity of the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. On the eve of Al-Quds Day and in solidarity with the Palestinian people, it is significant to pay attention to some important points and developments related to the Palestinian issue that requires the attention and vigilance of the Islamic Ummah and freedom-thinking people. In this regard, I will touch upon some important issues. First, the normalization of relations between some Arab states and the Zionist regime only encourages occupation and oppression in the land of Palestine. Unfortunately, today we are witnessing the ignorance of the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people by the sinister alliance and complicity of the axis of the United States, the Israeli regime, and some European and regional countries. And the result is the continuation of operation, crime, and sedition of the Zionist regime in the occupied territories. The signatories of the so-called pact known as Abraham Accords misuse the desire of peace with the Palestinians as a pretext for their acts. The major consequence of the normalization plan is that the question of Palestine is removed from the priority agenda of these countries, and consequently the Zionist regime abuses this issue to cover up its daily crimes against the Palestinians. Second, one of the latest tricks of the Zionist regime and its affiliated media and agents is to create a rift between Islamic countries and within Islamic communities. The agents of the regime are trying to get closer to Islamic communities outside the Islamic world, including in Europe, under the pretext of normalization of relations and inter-religious dialogue, in order to remove the ugliness of relations with the occupiers of Palestine in the eyes of Muslims, and to gain a reputation for the criminals. Such efforts, along with extremist anti-Islamic actions in some European countries, such as burning the Muslims' holy book or beloved Quran in heavily populated Muslim areas in Sweden by the Danish far-right party leader, are two sides of the same coin that pursue the common goal of intensifying Islamophobia and diverting the attention of the international community from the crimes of the Zionist regime in occupied Palestine. My third point is that the double standard of Western countries and responsible international organizations on the question of Palestine has become a concern for the world's freedom-thinking and peace-seeker people. And this approach is no longer tolerable by people of the region, given the dimensions of the human rights violations of the Zionist actions. This double standard has shown its nature in dealing with the issue of Russia-Ukraine war in comparison with the issue of Palestine, which has been in a much more catastrophic situation for more than 70 years. Obviously, justice and rightness require that responsible organizations and countries treat the problem of the international community, or treat the problems of the international community rather, in a fair and equal manner, and stop discrimination and double standards. My fourth point is on the importance of the issue of Palestine in the Islamic world. Yet after more than 7 decades of invasion and occupation of Palestinian territory, no other issue can replace the importance of the Palestinian question in the Islamic world. At least 3 main reasons have made Palestine one of the most important issues in the Islamic world. First, the quiddity of the land of Palestine is its place among the followers of Islam. Second, the nature of the Zionist enemy and its expansionist and occupying ideology to establish ownership over the land of Palestine and Islamic holy sites. And third, the reality of the Western Zionist alliance, which seeks to divide and weaken the Islamic Ummah so that Islamic countries remain dependent on the great powers. In this regard, as an example, US policy is very much in the interest of Israel. Besides unrestricted political support, the US annually provides more than $3.8 billion in military aid to the Israeli regime. More than 50 times so far, the United States has used its veto power in the Security Council in the interest of Israel, and that speaks for itself. My fifth point is that in recent years, the apartheid and occupying Zionist regime has intensified its sadistic action against the Palestinians. The latest example of a series of gross, consistent, and systematic violation of human rights actions in the occupied territories is the Israeli army's raids on Al-Aqsa Mosque and beating and arresting Palestinian worshippers during the holy month of Ramadan. which originates from the spirit of aggression and brutality of this regime. My sixth point is that the support of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the oppressed people of Palestine is not a short-term and tactical policy. This is not only rooted in the religious beliefs of the Iranians, but also, most importantly, is a human and humanitarian duty that is based on the nature of every free persons of every religion and race. So by setting Iran against the Arab and Islamic world and portraying the Islamic Republic of Iran as a common threat, the temporary Zionist regime is trying to divert the attention of the Muslims of the world from the Palestinian cause. We want to assure the Zionist regime that escalation of the regime's action to foment Iranophobia cannot marginalize the issue of Palestine. So what is the alternative to all these brutalities, to all these crimes, to this headache of 7 decades of suffering of the Palestinian people? Well, Iran has a clear and fair plan to resolve the Palestinian crisis. While the Western governments and important international organizations have failed to resolve the Palestinian issue, and all the proposed solutions have failed due to their biased approach, the Islamic Republic of Iran has a democratic and just plan to resolve the Palestinian crisis. And that is to hold a national referendum in Palestine, which is also registered with the United Nations Secretariat some 2 years ago. Iran believes that the return of Palestinian refugees to their homelands and holding a referendum among the original residents of this land of any religion and race to determine the fate and type of their political system is the most effective solution to resolve this conflict. The plan of the Islamic Republic of Iran has been formulated and presented based on democratic principles and rules of the international law accepted by all governments and nations. This plan will be a good alternative to the previous failed plan. And last but not least, many neutral analysts believe that the apartheid and occupying Israeli regime is on brinks of collapse from within, rather, due to the many contradictions and structural problems, the organized corruption of its leaders, and the growing economic crisis. However, what is lasting in our belief is the principle of the legitimate resistance of the Palestinian people against the occupation and the continuation of their struggle for the liberation of the Palestinian territories, and inshallah this happen very soon. May Allah bless all of you, and thank you for listening to my speech.
The message of Imam Khomeini shone the light of hope in the hearts of the oppressed Palestinians and made millions of displaced and struggling people more determined and steadfast in their practical confrontation with the conspiracies of the occupying regime in Jerusalem. Imam Khomeini's message became a turning point in the struggling of the Palestinian people and gave authenticity to the long history of this struggle. Hujjatul Islam Qaisar Abbas from United States of America, representing global Urdu community. I would like to request him to throw light on Al-Quds, on the day of Al-Quds. Hujjatul Islam al-Muslimin, Maulana Qaisar Abbas.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. قدس کے اس عالمی دن پر اہل بیت ایسوسی ایشن کی طرف سے اس عظیم الشان سیمینار کے انعقاد پر میں اس ایسوسی ایشن کے تمام احباب اور منتظمین کا شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں، اور اپنے تمام معزز مہمانان گرامی، سامعین اور ناظرین کا بھی شکریہ ادا کرتا ہوں کہ حقیقت میں ہم اس عظیم عبادت کو، اس عظیم فریضے کو انجام دینے چلے ہیں جو مسلمان ہونے کے ناطے سے ہماری ذمہ داری بنتا ہے، جو صاحب ایمان ہونے کے ناطے سے ہماری ذمہ داری بنتی ہے، اور ایک انسان ہونے کے ناطے سے ہمارا فریضہ بنتا ہے۔ اور ذمہ داری حقیقت میں دنیا بھر کے جتنے مظلوم ہیں، محروم ہیں، پسے ہوئے طبقات ہیں، جن کی سسکتی ہوئی آواز کو دنیا کے ظالم دبانا چاہتے ہیں، آج کے دن حقیقت میں اس مناسبت سے ہم ان تمام مظلومین کی حمایت کا اعلان کرتے ہیں۔ حقیقت میں یوم القدس جو 1979 میں اگست کے مہینے میں رہبر کبیر انقلاب عالم اسلام کے عظیم رہنما امام خمینی رضوان اللہ علیہ کی طرف سے قدس کے عالمی دن کے طور پر رمضان المبارک کے آخری جمعے کا اعلان کیا گیا تھا، اور ان کی آواز پر لبیک کہتے ہوئے اس وقت سے آج تک دنیا کا ہر باشعور انسان، ہر وہ شخص جس کا ضمیر زندہ ہے، جس کے اندر انسانیت کی رمق رمق زندہ ہے، اس نے اپنی آواز کو اس رہبر عظیم الشان کی آواز کے ساتھ ملایا ہے۔ عزیزوں، مسلمان ہونے کے ناطے سے ہماری ذمہ داری بنتی ہے، جس سے قرآن نے واضح طور پر فرمایا ہے، کسی کی برائی کا اعلان کرنے کا حکم اللہ نے نہیں دیا سوائے اس کے کہ جس پر ظلم کیا گیا ہو۔ جو مظلوم ہے اس کو اللہ نے یہ حق عطا کیا ہے، یعنی اللہ نے بھی اس کو یہ حق عطا کیا ہے، ایمان کا یہ حق ہے، دین کا یہ حق ہے، عقل نے حق انسان کو عطا کیا ہے کہ جو مظلوم ہے وہ اپنی آواز کو بلند کرے، وہ ظالم کے خلاف اپنی آواز کو بلند کرے، تاکہ باقی دنیا کے کانوں میں اس مظلوم کی آواز پہنچے اور وہ ظالم کے خلاف اس مظلوم کا ساتھ دے۔ رمضان مبارک کا مہینہ ابھی چند دن پہلے امیر المومنین کی شہادت کے ایام گزرے ہیں۔ میرے مولا نے بھی اپنی آخری وصیت میں اپنے بچوں سے یہی کہا، تکون للظالم خصما وللمظلوم عونا، میرے بچوں ظالم کے تم دشمن بن کے رہنا اور مظلوم کے ساتھی بن کے رہنا۔ حقیقت میں قدس کا دن دنیا میں ہونے والے ہر ظلم کے خلاف آواز کا دن ہے، ہر مظلوم کی آواز میں آواز ملانے کا دن ہے، بالخصوص فلسطین مظلوم کے ساتھ ہمدردی کے اعلان کا دن ہے، بیت المقدس کے ساتھ ہمدردی کے اعلان کا دن ہے۔ آج دنیا بھر میں جہاں جہاں پر بھی ظلم ہو رہا ہے، چاہے وہ یمن ہے، چاہے وہ فلسطین ہے، چاہے وہ کشمیر ہے، چاہے وہ افریقہ ہے، جہاں جہاں پر بھی ہے، حقیقت میں آج کا دن ہر اس ظلم کے خلاف آواز اٹھانے کا دن ہے، اس لیے کہ ہم ایک ایسی بحث دنیا میں رہ رہے ہیں کہ جہاں پر دنیا کی مقتدر طاقتیں مظلوم کی آواز کو دبا رہی ہیں۔ اس دنیا نے دوہرے معیار قائم کیے ہوئے ہیں، ڈبل سٹینڈرڈ بنائے ہوئے ہیں۔ یوکرائن پہ ظلم ہو تو اس کے خلاف تو پوری دنیا آواز اٹھائے، مغرب کا پورا میڈیا بڑے سائنٹیفک طریقے سے यूक्रेन की मजलूमियत का ऐलान तो करे, लेकिन इस मीडिया को कई सालों से 70 साल से ज्यादा हो गए फिलिस्तीन पर होने वाला जुल्म नजर नहीं आ रहा। फिलिस्तीन की वो सिसकती हुई माएं, वो बिलखते हुए बच्चे नजर नहीं आ रहे। 8 साल से ज्यादा अरसा हो गया है यमन की मजलूम अवाम पर इस्तेमार के गुमाश्तों ने अरसा हयात को तंग कर रखा है। 45,000 से ज्यादा लोग, जिसमें एक बड़ी तादाद मासूम बच्चों और खवातीन की है, बेगुनाह तरीके से उन्हें शहीद कर दिया गया। यमन में घरों पे बमबारी हो रही है, अस्पतालों पे बमबारी हो रही है, पुलों और ब्रिजेस और रोड्स को उड़ाया जा रहा है, लेकिन दुनिया का मीडिया और दुनिया की ताकतें खामोश है। लेकिन हम एक मुसलमान होने के नाते से, एक इंसान होने के नाते से इस जुल्म पर खामोश नहीं बैठ सकते। हमारी जिम्मेदारी बनती है कि हम दुनिया के तमाम मजलूमों के हक में आवाज उठाएं। इसराइल के जुल्म बर्बरियत की मजम्मत करें, सऊदिया के जुल्म बर्बरियत की मजम्मत करें, इंडिया के जुल्म बर्बरियत की मजम्मत करें, और जहां जहां पर कोई जालिम कोई भी जुल्म कर रहा है उसकी मजम्मत करें। खुदा इंशाअल्लाह अनकरीब, और यकीनन वो दिन अनकरीब आने वाला है जब इस दुनिया पर मजलूमों की हुकूमत कायम होगी, ये जालिमाना निजाम खत्म होगा। आइए इस कारवान का हिस्सा बने और मजलूम के साथ अपनी आवाज को मिलाएं और जालिम के खिलाफ अपनी आवाज को बुलंद करें। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू।
Let's not forget that Quds is a land that is sacred to the followers of all divine religions. Quds is the place of ascension of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and the first Qibla of Muslims in the world. The Zionists, as their leaders have repeatedly acknowledged, and not content with occupying the territory of Palestine and the Holy Quds. And if they do not face resistance from the Palestinian people and the reaction of the Muslim public in their expansionist aspirations, their dream of achieving a land-based dream, the Zionists have not yet achieved stability and peace, even within the borders of Palestine. There is no reason for this defeat except the widespread and continuous resistance of the oppressed Palestinian nation and the oppressed people of the world. Father Frank Galley is the father of Church of England, humanitarian lover, and keen observer of geopolitical global situation. I would like to request him to throw light on Al-Quds Day. Father Frank Galley.
I want to send you all, my good friends, a message of peace and love from me, the Reverend Frank Galley, a priest of the Anglican Church, Church of England. I'm committed to religious dialogue and friendship, especially with Islam. And I want to say that Jerusalem, Al-Quds in Arabic, should be a link between the three major faiths, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. It should be a bond of peace. But as it is now a bond of contention. Not a bond, but a bone of contention. It's an expression. Because of the unilateral action taken by the Israeli authorities in making Jerusalem, the whole of Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. Now, this, as a Christian, I cannot accept, because Jerusalem should really be a special place administered by the three major religions. The Vatican, after the Second World War, proposed to the United Nations that Jerusalem should be a corpus separatum, a Latin expression meaning it should be a special entity administered by the United Nations on behalf of three major faiths. But the Israelis rejected that and went into a unilateral mode. And we have had many intifadas signaling how the Arab people of Jerusalem do not accept this Israeli rule and domination. So things are not well because of the domination of Jerusalem by one particular state and religion. Now, I want to say that for me, I'm aware, of course, that Jerusalem is very important in Islam because in the Quran, in Surah Banu Israel, there is a reference to both to the to a journey of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, from Medina to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to heaven, the Miraj. Now, and indeed, Jerusalem was first Qibla, the first direction towards which Muslims turn in prayer before the direction was changed to Mecca. For Christians, I'm a Christian, of course, and it is the place where Jesus spent the end of his ministry before he was unjustly seized, tried, crucified until he rose again. So the key thing here is that it is a place sacred to our religions. So why should the Israelis, in a sort of unilateral way, have taken it over completely? Seems to me very unjust and very unfair. I should say that a great friend of mine was an Arab Archbishop Hilarion Capucci, who was Archbishop of Jerusalem because he came from the Melkite church in communion with the Catholic Church, and he was an indomitable fighter for the cause of Jerusalem and of Palestine. He was imprisoned by the Israelis twice. He was 88-year-old when he was last imprisoned because he was on a famous Navi Marmara ship which tried to blockade the unjust Gaza situation, and the Israelis boarded unlawfully the ship, killed some participants, and imprisoned Monsignor Capucci, Ilario Capucci. I met him last time in Rome, and he told me, Frank, we shall, God willing, Jerusalem will be free. We shall meet in heaven in the heavenly Jerusalem. So there is this message of peace and message of love, which we are committed to. But it's a broader context, of course. So we have to see how some dark forces use the expression Dajjal, with negative person or entity, which is a kind of antichrist, and writing a book about Dajjal myself. And it's sort of behind the machinations which are trying to marginalize and oppress and destroy good people of our faith. Tyranny is now worldwide, is sponsored by some entities, which I think you probably understand to whom I'm referring, and using the United States as a sort of big power ram, as a kind of battery ram to oppress the forces of justice. Now, it seems to me that we must not surrender. We must fight on. There is no third way between surrender and resistance. So we must resist. There is an axis of resistance to which all people of faith, people of religion, of peace and love are committed. But we must resist oppression, we must resist injustice. It's a fundamental duty which God has entrusted, well, I said personally to me as a Christian, but I'm sure to many others. And I want to say as well, so a message Allah to the people of Iran. I've been to Iran twice. I'm a great friend of the Iranian people, and I know how these unfair sanctions, demonic sanctions, satanic sanctions, inflicted on Iran by the United States, I'm sorry to say, because I got American friends as well. But the sanctions in Iran penalizing the people of Iran are demonic, are satanic. And that is something which is so utterly unjust, so utterly unfair. So I want to send a message of solidarity to the people of Iran as well. Say, I'm on your side. I will not rest until these dark forces, the Dajjalish forces, are defeated. And the rule of justice, the rule of peace is established in the Middle East and worldwide. And finally, I want to say that I'm a great also supporter of a message given by Imam Khomeini, the late Imam Khomeini, who established the Al-Quds Day in order to counteract also the unilateral decision of the Israelis to make Jerusalem their own capital. Here we are, my friends. We have to fight on. We must fight on the good fight with a famous hymn, of course, to fight the good fight with all your might. And we must not desist. We must not cease from fighting unless we achieve victory. And the people of Palestine are free, and our religions can coexist in love and peace in Jerusalem and in the rest of the world. We are assured of our eventual victory by our scriptures, by the message in our hearts. By our hearts are telling us that evil will not triumph. Evil will not triumph. Dajjal will be defeated. And we must be of good cheer because, as Christ says, I have overcome the world meaning the dark forces. So God bless you all, my good friends, and inshallah, we shall meet again, perhaps in a liberated Jerusalem. God bless you.
I'm calling a man who came to the UK in 1971 and has worked in the voluntary sector for some many years. In 1997, he helped to set up the Islamic Human Rights Commission, of which he is currently the chair. Mr. Masood Shajra, the chairman, Islamic Human Rights Commission, thrown light on current situation of Al-Quds. Mr. Masood Shajra, the chairman, Islamic Human Rights Commission.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear brothers and sisters, friends, colleagues, campaigners for justice, today we are commemorating the Al-Quds Day, International Day of Al-Quds. First of all, we need to recognize that this was the first time that a day was designated to remember and feel the pain of the oppressed, specifically in Palestine, and become supporters and promoters of their cause, and to tell them and the whole of the international community and the oppressors that Palestinians are not alone. We are there to support them, and we will do that day in, day out, year in, year out, and we will do it until they are free. And but also I think certain developments have taken place now in the world. I remember in 2001 Durban conference in South Africa where we attended. There was UN conference in South Africa against racism, and we presented a report showing that the Zionist regime is an apartheid. And indeed, on that occasion, the NGO Forum of UN almost unanimously, with a very large proportion of votes, voted for that this Zionist state, these occupiers are indeed an apartheid system and regime. Now, since then, we have had Ben Salam, Israeli human rights organization, restating that fact. And then we have Human Rights Watch a year ago reinstating this fact. And Amnesty International also coming up and announcing that this is indeed an apartheid regime. And a couple of reports from the UN, one, the latest, was only a month ago in Geneva, again highlighting the reality and the fact that this is an apartheid system. Now, why I'm concentrating on this is because apartheid has got a certain legal implication, which means that all the states, every government around the world should actually oppose it and challenge it, and to become supporter of it is actually committing apartheid themselves or breaking the international law. And that's one factor. The other factor is that apartheid cannot be reformed. Apartheid regime have to be removed and replaced. So indeed, we have to sort of really understand this fully. If we are going to bring justice, if we are going to bring harmony within the different communities, between people from Jewish community, Muslim community, Christian community, and others from other faith, and indeed people with no faith, we need to remove this apartheid racist regime and ideology, and that's the only way. So, we are going to be very, very clear. We cannot reform the Zionist state, apartheid state. It has to be removed and replaced. And that is what we have to concentrate on. That is the only way to bring solution to occupied Palestine. And indeed, that's the only way to bring solution to the whole region. So let us concentrate on that. This is what we've been saying for a very long time. And thank God, alhamdulillah, others are understanding the real situation. There's no way you could hide it anymore. Their sort of activities of apartheid, activities and laws and legislation they are doing day in, day out in this Zionist regime, it actually made it almost impossible not to recognize that this is an apartheid state. Even if you are deaf, dumb, and blind, you still will see that this is an apartheid state. And so therefore, let's move forward. Let's work together with all our friends or all our colleagues, everyone who stands for justice, and let us remove this apartheid system and replace it in the same way that we did in South Africa with something that gives a hope to different communities with different backgrounds, Jewish community, Muslim community, Christians, and others, to begin to put in their lives together and trying to ensure a future based on safety, respect, not on racism.
Manifestations of global support for the suffering people of Palestine. Al-Quds Day is not just a Palestinian day. It is the day of oppressed people of the world. It is the day of justice. It is the day that oppressed people of the world must raise its flag across all countries. It is a day that the superpowers must realize that they can no longer advance in occupied territories. I consider Quds Day to be the day of Islam and the day of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. And it is a day when we must equip all our political forces and must get out of the isolation and stand always for oppressed people of the world. The leading party of oppressed people of Palestine, we have our distinguished guest, Mr. Khalid Kadumi, the representative of Hamas Palestine. I would like to request him to throw light on the day of Al-Quds. Dr. Khalid Qadoumi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the beginning, I would like to thank the Ahlul Bayt Association for giving me such opportunity to speak to you, distinguished guests, in the occasion and the anniversary of the Day of Al-Quds, the International Day of Al-Quds, which has been customed by Imam Khomeini, the leader of Islamic revolution of Iran. As you witness nowadays, what is happening in Palestine, in Jerusalem, in West Bank, and Gaza, and the continuous atrocities and aggression of the Israeli army, their settlers, against our civilian people, against our shrines and holy places. If you talk about Al-Quds nowadays, you're talking about raids by those extreme religious fanatic elements of settlers into the Al-Aqsa Mosque under the safeguard of the Israeli army and Israeli police. And they are challenging and instigating all what so-called violence in the international language because of their own behavior against the holy, sacred places for Muslims and also for Christians, Palestinians from, as I said, Israeli army and Israeli settlers who are illegally living in over our land, and this illegal situation is being endorsed by the international community. If you talk about West Bank today, the whole geography, which was supposed to be designated by the international community for the Palestinian, again, the Israeli settlers are there, and according to the official census center of Palestine, during the last year, 2021, the Israelis has built and established more than 10,000 settlement units inside West Bank, which is a clear and direct violation to the international law. They have detained during the same period more than 4,000 Palestinians. They get in and come out with the so-called administrative detention. This administrative detention, maybe my audience are not familiar with this term because this is only a unique, quote unquote, term used by the Israeli regime. That is, they detain our youngsters over there, boys, girls, even minor 12 years old boys and girls, they are detained over there without putting them into a trial, without even under so-called classified dossiers. And that is the administrative detention, which can go 6 months and it can be renewed. Some of our people, brave heroes and youngsters, are behind the bar for more than 5 years under this continuous renewal of so-called the administrative detention. These all added to the besieged Gaza Strip for the last 12, 13 years since the year 2007, and the dire situation for more than 2 million Palestinian people in an open detention camp, which is called Gaza. This is in front of the international community, a clear violation to the human right. And lately, the reports which has been published and released by the Amnesty International that accused, rather, that explicitly said that this Israeli regime is an apartheid regime, and Israeli army has committed war of crimes and crimes against the human rights against the Palestinian in occupied Palestine. Having said that, I'll come to the double standard approach by the international community, unfortunately, when they are dealing with the Palestinian issue. What is happening in Ukraine today has been endorsed even by the Israeli regime that it is a violation for human rights. By Europeans, they are saying that there are killing for humans and civilians in Ukraine, and they are condemning it, and rather not only condemning it, they are now facilitating how they will host their refugees and how they will support them with weapons. The Ukrainian, they will send them weapons, they will send them the military aids and supports in order to alleviate, quote unquote, their human suffering, as if that they are human and we are something else in Palestine. This double standard is really an exposed approach by the international community, by the West, when they are dealing with us in the region. 72 years, more than 72 years, we are under the yoke of occupation, of Israeli occupation. International community announced what's so-called two-state solution, but where is the Palestinian state that is dignitarious and sovereign and independent? It's nothing of that. The Israelis are continuously violating the international law. The international organization is endorsing this violation, but unfortunately, without any real implementation for the law to stop those Israeli atrocities against our innocent civilian, legitimate people in Palestine, that is the Palestinian. On the same time, the actions now inside Palestine is very sensitive and is about to explode. Israelis during the last 48 hours, they targetedly killed 4 youngsters in West Bank just because they were marching with civil with peaceful rallies against the Israeli atrocities and protesting that the Israelis are preventing them to move and perform their prayers inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. Again and again, there is no rationality at all in this approach when they deal with this favorite baby, which is called the Israeli regime by the West. We highly condemn the approach of international community, who are at one side endorsing the violation of Israeli regime to the human rights, but on the other hand, they are doing nothing. Rather, sometimes we feel that they are saying that both sides have to behave when you throw a rocket, or even when you shoot with a small preliminary rifle as a civilian against an artillery, one of the nuclear power like the Israeli regime in the world. This is a very irrational and judgment. Having said that, I will say today that our people in Palestine have decided to move forward, to steadfast and continue with the language which has been understood the only language being understood by our enemy, that is the language of resistance. Sending a very clear message to the international community that we are as human as any white human in the world, as any Western human in the world. We have the same blood, we have the same flesh, we are all of us sons and daughters of Adam and Eve, but you are behaving with us as different entity, and you are favoring the narrative of Israel, which your peoples today have witnessed a protest against your own policies favoring this Israeli regime, as we have seen how the people last year, during also the holy month of Ramadan, how they have thronged into the streets protesting against the European people, the Jewish American people, which they have came into the street protesting against the Israeli atrocities against our holy shrines in Jerusalem and in Al-Aqsa Mosque last year, and how our resistance has defended our people, civilian peoples in Jerusalem from Gaza, and then only then Israel has to stop their own atrocities and to pull out from our holy mosque and to pull out from Jerusalem. Israel is continuing their own atrocities and their own violation to the international law. One of those examples also, the villages which has been, I mean, this is something maybe not being written in the books even during for ages, during the histories of revolutions and histories of struggle of our nation, how this enemy is a different enemy from any other enemy during the history. One of our villages by name of Al-Araqib in the southern of Palestine, it's built by iron sheets and corrugated sheets, plastics, and some tents over there. The Israeli army, they have destroyed and knocked down this village for more than 130 times, and they're with different pretext of illegality of whatever it is, which is totally, you can't judge it because they are the court, they are the judge, they are the one who to decide what is right and wrong. And you can imagine that the victims, how they have to behave, and our people still rebuild their own villages and move forward. Other example really, which is very very strange and shocking to all humanity, that in Jerusalem they destroy the houses of our people over there in order to change the identity through a demographical change of the city to in favor of the Jews and favor of the Israelis. And how they demolish that house, they will condition on you as an owner of the house to pay the expenses of those trucks which will they move and destroy your house. Just imagine that your only house, which has been built for your daughters, for your sons, and for your family, and the futures and the dreams and all stories inside that house, they decide that it has to be demolished, and they decide that you have to pay for the demolishing expenses of that. This is the enemy which we are facing today. So the international community has to be just in their approach, has to be rational in their approach. We again and again reiterate that we want to live in peace as any peaceful nation in this world, but on the other hand, not on the expense of our legitimate right, which has been endorsed by the international communities and agencies. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for having me at your program, International Association of Ahlul Bayt. And wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Quds Day is a day when you must warn all the superpowers that you must remove your hand from the oppressed peoples of the world. Quds Day is the day of Islam. Quds Day is the day of humanity. Quds Day is the day when we must warn all superpowers that Islam will no longer be under your control through your evil deeds. Al-Quds Day is the day of the life of Islam. I would like to request my honorable guest, Professor Dr. Fuad Ezdi, a political analyst. He is a keen observer of geopolitical situation of the region. He is discussing and throwing lights in different channels, CNN, Russian TV, Press TV, Sky TV, and all over the world's channels. I would like to request him to throw light on the day of Al-Quds. Dr. Fuad Ezdi.
Thank you very much for the invitation. As you know, we are celebrating and commemorating the 45th anniversary of the Quds Day, the International Quds Day. It was 45 years ago when Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh announced that the last Friday of the month of Ramadan should be dedicated to the cause of Palestine. And Muslims all over the world have been listening to that call in different countries. I think this year is going to be somewhat different from previous years because of a number of developments. The first development is what's happening inside Palestine, especially what is happening inside the occupied territories of 1948. Historically, the resistance against occupation in previous years was concentrated in Gaza, and to some extent, these demonstrations and intifada was also orchestrated and followed in the West Bank. And throughout the last many decades, the territories in 1948 occupation were not as active. What we have seen in the last few years, especially the previous year, the last year, is that the young people, the resistance, is actually becoming more powerful in 1948 territories. In recent weeks, we have seen developments that indicate that Palestinians, that their lands were occupied in 1948, are becoming more active and are following the principles of resistance, which is a very, very important development. I think the demise of occupation is going to come much faster if the Palestinians of 1948 land continue this progress. So this year, the International Al-Quds, they celebrate this fact that this new development is going to take root. And of course, in the last year, we had a period of resistance and which was successful, quite successful. So overall, this is the first point that I think we need to remember. The second point is the fact that the anti-Israeli movement all over the world is becoming more powerful. So not only you have the Palestinian cause addressed in a significant way inside the occupied territory, you have the Palestinian cause followed outside boundaries of Palestine, and very much mainstream organizations like Amnesty International in the United Kingdom are producing reports pointing out to the fact that Israel is an apartheid state, which is very important because I believe the demise of the occupation is going to happen because of two reasons. One, the resistance of Palestinians inside Palestine, and the reduction of support that Israel has been enjoying since the start of the occupation from Western countries. And as we progress, more and more people in the United States, United Kingdom, other countries that have historically supported the occupation, realize that Israel is an apartheid state. And as we go through demographic changes in the United States and a number of other Israel supporters, and these demographic changes lead these countries to be less white and hopefully less racist. You're going to have political parties in these countries becoming and accepting and welcoming people of color. And these political parties would face difficulties if they want to support an apartheid state when the people of color are going to be in these political parties in significant numbers. And this is one reason you have these mainstream organizations like Amnesty International pointing to the fact that Israel is an apartheid state, because continuing that facade of supporting Israel is becoming more and more difficult as we progress. Of course, some may point to the idea that we have a number of Arab states that are going through normalization of relations with the occupiers of Palestine. But as far as I know, this is nothing to be worried about, because the Israeli leaders are basically engaging in these type of shows, inviting disgraced Arab leaders to Palestine, having them visit the grave of the war criminal Ben Gurion, the diseased former prime minister of Israel. And these type of shows are not addressing the real problems that Israelis have. The real problem that Israelis have is that they're unable and unwilling to resolve the main issue that they are facing, which is the Palestinian cause. So instead of addressing that issue, they engage in gimmicks. They invite useless Arab leaders and they take photos at the grave of a war criminal and these type of activities. So when you don't resolve the main problem that you have and then you engage in other activities, this is a sign of weakness, the sign that they're not able to resolve the main issues that they have. And the public opinion in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, and throughout the world is realizing what's happening. So the resistance becomes more powerful because they realize the alternative is the disgrace. The third point that I think is significant in the past year since we celebrated Al-Quds Day last year is the developments in Ukraine. You have obviously seen the very extensive coverage of Russian war and attack on Ukraine, the civilian casualties, and all the stories that we have been witnessing in Western news media. And the question that a lot of people are asking is that if attacking another country and occupying other people's land is bad, why these Western countries that are supporting Ukraine are silent on the issue of occupation of Palestinian lands? And many of them, like the United States and United Kingdom, actually provide billions of dollars of aid to the occupiers. Imagine if today President Biden announced that he's going to send $3 or $4 billion to Vladimir Putin. Everybody would be shocked. And this is what the United States does every year when they support the occupation of Palestine. Attacking civilians is very much condemned, and it should be. But what about Palestinians that have been under Israeli bombardment for many, many decades? And it's not very difficult to see the racism that exists, that if Palestinians are bombed or Yemenis are bombed, it's okay. That's what happens in the Middle East. But if Europeans are bombed, then this is going to be shocking and it has to stop. It has to stop. And also the racism that exists in this discourse, that also has to stop. So overall, I think the cause of Palestine has moved forward significantly in the past year. And I hope that this conference on International Quds Day is going to be a successful event. I need to thank the organizers of the conference again, and I hope you're going to basically continue this project until Palestine is free.
Quds Day is a global day. It is not a day dedicated only to Quds. It is the day of confronting the oppressed with the arrogant. Ahlul Bayt Association, with the collaboration of Ahlul Bayt TV, really thankful to you for joining us on this memorable day, the day of Al-Quds. Thank you for being with us.